I want to take this opportunity to congratulate my friends Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on their historic victory. This was the most important election in modern American history because the very future of our democracy and the rule of law in our country was at stake. And thankfully, because of the efforts of people all across this country, including millions of progressive grassroots activists, Black and white, Latino, Asian American, and Native American, who worked their hearts out, we were able to win.
Welcome to Labour Grassroots, and today we are talking about the American election and the lessons that have been learned from that. Joe Biden has obviously just about won the election, though we don't quite know if Trump's going to stop it. But why did he win? Was it because he created this broad coalition? That's the conclusion that was drawn by Keir Starmer. We're lucky to have with us Mark Seddon, who's been based in New York and has been quite familiar with Bernie Sanders' campaign. I think he knows a bit about Biden's campaign. Mark, are you there?
I am, Crispin.
So what's your view? You heard what Bernie Sanders said, that he thanked the activists out there for making that election win possible. Is that the key to Biden's victory?
I think it probably was, and it's certainly the key to the Democrats holding on to power and winning again. Not just the activists, of course, but the campaign and the policies in which they stand. There's no doubt that the Democratic Party has moved to the left, although the machinery of the party, not dissimilar to, I mean, you can't always make too many crossovers, but there is a similarity between the machinery at the top of the Democratic Party and the top of the reconstituted new Labour Party that we seem to have got. But at the same time, I mean, I think the interesting thing as far as the Democratic Party is concerned is that Biden is a guy of long political experience and of a degree of wisdom, even though some of us may not really be necessarily his fellow travelers and everything, and has been working quite closely with Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, AOC, and others, and must have known that obviously the Hillary Clinton, I mean, part of the deal that he fight, if you recall, he almost dropped out of those primaries. He almost lost. He came back. He was rescued essentially by older African American Democrat supporters, put back onto the ballot sheet effectively, became the candidate. And the deal really from Biden was, I'm going to win back those voters Hillary Clinton lost to Trump, especially the blue collar voters in what the media likes to call the Rust Belt, working class voters, many of whom went to Trump because Trump back in 2016, when I was there, we were predicting, some of us at the time on the left, that Trump was going to win because he was stealing Bernie Sanders's clothes. That, in many respects, what happened, and Biden has sort of taken some of them back. And there's been a huge turnout. And perhaps one of the few contributions that Donald Trump has made by his ability to engender dislike and like in equal measure is an extraordinary democratic turnaround in terms of turnout. That is his achievement. But there is the difference, Crispin, between a Democrat. By the way, you can't really be a member of the Democratic Party, so it'd be very difficult to suspend Bernie Sanders or AOC should Joe Biden want to do that. But there is, of course, no indication that he would. And there's every indication that he knows that if he's got to win power and hold on to power and take on the populists of the far right, he's got to stick by healthcare. He's got to stick by the minimum wage and lots of these other social democratic policies that Bernie Sanders has been really pushing as a democratic socialist. And one of the great achievements, incidentally, of Sanders, in my view, is to be a democratic socialist from Vermont who almost became the presidential candidate, has helped develop with others such a mass movement in America. That's a fantastic achievement. But going directly to your question, I know you don't want us to drone on for too long. So Keir Starmer has made this, he's told people in the Labour Party, this is what we have to do to win power. but at the same time as having firstly dropped one of his opponents in the Labour leadership campaign, dropped her from his shadow cabinet, Rebecca Lombay, sacked her, and secondly, as we've seen in recent weeks, suspended the former leader of the Labour Party. To do something once might be a bit careless, but to do it twice reeks of actual incompetence, a total lack of wisdom, and something that Biden most certainly would not do. So the idea that you can have a broad coalition to win, yes, you can, and it does work. But at the moment, that's certainly not the case with the British Labour Party, as far as I can make out from this leadership. It's about closing it down. It's a deeply sectarian act. So I think the lecture from Sir Keir Starmer about it will fall on hollow ears, because, of course, I'll leave you this one parting thing. What I have picked up is that Jeremy Corbyn has been suspended. We're not altogether clear on what basis he has been suspended. What is this rule? There was the old axiom in the New Labour Party that it's a rule, but it's not written down. That appears to be the case with Jeremy Corbyn. Not only that, but we can't even discuss it. It can't be discussed. Resolutions will be ruled out of order. This is ruled by diktat and would not be tolerated for a minute in the US Democratic Party.
No, I mean, do you ultimately think that Labour can't win if it doesn't include all sides of the Labour Party? If he is going to exclude people as he is, do you think that's
well? I mean, look, the thing is, it's that Harold Wilson said of the Labour Party that it's a coalition. It's like a bird. It has to have a left wing and a right wing to fly. I actually reached this conclusion some time ago that it's actually the two wings are almost incompatible now. The levels of bitterness and sectarianism, the way that the Parliamentary Labour Party behaved towards Corbyn on his election, the way that it helped whip up this anti-Corbyn feeling in the so-called liberal media, it's been very, very telling. So, but I don't see that coalition there. And also, more important, if you ask the public have just been asked, is the Labour Party, is it divided or united? Well, 57% of people say it appears to be divided after Corbyn was suspended. That's obvious. Now, maybe Sir Keir Starmer thinks he can move on. But if I was Jeremy Corbyn and I had some legal advice, I'd be battling away and make sure that I was reinstated. And this could go on and on. He's dug himself a very deep hole, frankly, and I think acted in a very petulant way. So, no, I think he's brought trouble upon himself in doing what he's done.
All right. Well, thank you, Mark, for coming on the show. Great to see you. I'm going to introduce our next guest speaker, Lindsey, German from Stop the War. How are you doing, Lindsey?
I'm fine, thanks, Crispin. How are you?
I'm good. I know you're not a Labour member, are you? You're outside the Labour Party, but you're part of a group in Stop the War that was made up one of the biggest, their biggest demonstration in London. So if we need a coalition, Stop the War would be a very useful ally for Keir Starmer. Do you feel that he's making the right noises to create a coalition with a group like Stop the War?
No, I think he's fairly clearly. I mean, if you look at foreign policy, leaving aside the other issues that Mark's talked about, and that I'm sure other people will talk about, the domestic things, but it's fairly clear on foreign policy that he's going to very much follow traditional Labour policies on those things, as opposed to the kind of policies that Jeremy Corbyn put forward, which I think actually were quite popular. And I remember in 2017 when Jeremy Corbyn spoke after the terrorist attack in Manchester and made that speech. I think that was a major development for a Labour leader, particularly during the election campaign. And I think actually it did him good. I mean, I'm sure he did it out of his principles as opposed to whether it would help him electorally. But actually, I think lots of people in the country said this guy's telling the truth. He's right about terrorism, that the wars have helped to create terrorism. So I think, unfortunately, Labour's moved away from those kind of positions. Jeremy was quite isolated in those positions anyway, as you know. When you talk about the PLP, one of the things that people like Ian Austin and some of the other right-wingers used to pick on, even the day that he apologised, the day of the Chilcot inquiry, when he apologised for the war in Iraq. This was something they really, really felt viscerally opposed to Jeremy over. So yeah, I don't see Keir Starmer signing up to stop the war anytime soon, but we're determined to keep going anyway and oppose any of the policies that he might be adopting, which we don't like, of which there are quite a few.
And what do you think about the Labour Party as it is now? Do you think that excluding people like Jeremy and, say, Rebecca Long-Bailey from either being dropped as a shadow cabinet member or being suspended, do you think that's going to divide the party enough that it won't be able to pull itself together again?
Well, I think the point that's already been made, that these kind of arguments actually don't help the Labour Party, is true. But I also think he's determined to go down this road because he's defining himself as not Jeremy Corbyn. You see this very clearly with the anti-Semitism argument, but you see it over a range of other things as well, the abstention on the spy cops and on the overseas services bill. You see it in his whole approach to things. His the article he wrote in The Guardian this week about Biden was very much in that vein. So I think the problem for Labour, and as you say, I'm not in the Labour Party, and I'm sure people are, got plenty of their own views without getting lots of free advice from people like me. But I do think there is a real issue here that the left was very, the left was very, very patient when Jeremy was leader in terms of the way that the right behaved and the open sabotage and attacks on him. The right don't have any of that patience with the left, and therefore we've got we've got the suspensions of people that you've talked about. There've been other local suspensions, as I understand it, in the last week or so over similar issues. And I think it's a big issue for the left. I'm sure people here, you're committed to being in the Labour Party, but I think that actually there's a big question of where the fight's going to come from the left, and whether the left is in a position to fight. Because obviously what's happening is when people open their mouths or stand up and be counted, they're finding it very, very difficult. And even we saw with the Socialist Campaign Group, I thought was poor, really, the number of those MPs who didn't sign what was a fairly moderate letter in support of Jeremy. So I think there are big questions here, and I tend to agree with Mark. I think it's got to the stage where I think the right want to drive the left out, and I think that the left has to kind of assert itself if that isn't going to happen. The danger is that if it does assert itself, then the right can be quite ruthless and may suspend a lot of people and so on. So it's a difficult question, and one that I think is, we've had 5 years or nearly 5 years of a left-wing Labour leader. That was a historic first. What's going to come after that? And if it's just back to the status quo, then I think lots of people will think, well, what's the point of all this?
Yeah, I mean, but I just find that Keir Starmer's comment that he wants to create a coalition of a broad coalition, it doesn't sound to me like he's doing that. So he's probably failing by his own, on his own terms. So look, thank you very much for coming in, Lindsey. You're an honorary guest to the Labour Party's Zoom meeting here.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. And I'm going to move to Chris in Sheffield, who's part of the Orgreave Truth and Justice campaign, and the Spy Cops bill is being discussed in the Lords. Is it now, or is it already being discussed?
Yeah, it's they had the debate this afternoon, and
so can I just come in? What I wanted to ask you was, your group, along with a number of other groups, have put in a recommendation for this.
Yeah.
Is Keir Starmer's approach to spy cops going to alienate all those groups as well, do you think?
Well, we haven't been too chuffed, to be quite honest, with the approach that the Labour MPs took, and we are grateful for those Labour MPs who voted against it, which it needed voted against in the Commons. It's the bill is a very, very bad bill, and as justice campaigners, And, you know, we do have the spy cops, the undercover police inquiry happening at the moment. And it, you know, it beggars belief, you know, in the first place that we're not waiting for the outcome of the findings of that inquiry before this bill is pushed through. And we do wish that Labour had been a lot more robust about it. As campaign groups, you know, we fight against injustice, a lot of historic injustice, where we know there's been covert agents operating in trade union activity, in campaigns. The Shrewsbury campaign is a campaign that was spied on for years, you know, and we're fighting for historic miscarriages of justice. And at the same time, you know, we're getting the support, and we are so grateful for the support of the Labour Party for the Orgreave Truth and Justice campaign once they're in power. But it sends out a bit of a mixed message when they say we support you fighting against the historic injustice, but we're not going to condemn future injustice against campaigns. The two don't really sit together, so it's that is disappointing.
I mean,
good speeches from people in the Lords today who spoke out. Shami Chakrabarti spoke out very well, and John Hendy, who's also representing trade unions at the Spy Cops inquiry, spoke out brilliantly. So you would hope, and I don't often say this, believe me, you'd hope you'd get some sense, better sense out of the House of Lords. But it's a despicable piece of legislation, which is basically authorising state-sanctioned criminality against us.
Can I just ask, because I've got to move on, but do you think that Keir Starmer's approach to the Spy Cops bill will have lost him a lot of support already, that it will find very difficult to win back?
I think, you know, that happening along with other events, recent events, it's kind of there always comes for a lot of people where their red line is. And they, you know, so I think it has really made a lot of people feel very disenfranchised. And I know some people have left over it. I know people who have resigned over it. I know people that are teetering on the edge. I was really interested in what Mark and Lindsey were saying, because, you know, I feel, you know, Starmer desperately does need the left. I mean, I can't believe you touched on it. That he put himself forward as a coalition type, bringing everybody unity candidate, and the signs that are coming out are far, far from that. But in terms of, you know, what he seems to be doing, what he thinks he needs to do, which I don't agree with, to win power. But it's not just about winning, it's about winning back some votes that were lost over a number of years. And then it's about staying in power. And to do that, we've got to have the right policies. Right. It's a combination.
Thank you, Chris. Sorry, there's so many people here. Thank you for joining. I'm going to speak to Howard Beckett. Are you there, Howard?
I am, Crispin. Sorry for that. I was getting myself confused with my computer there. Thank you for inviting me on again.
So did you catch what we've been saying? I mean, we're basically asking if Keir Starmer, when he says that he wants a broad coalition to win him power in 2024, it doesn't look like he's going about it in a very good way. What's your feeling on how well his campaign to build a coalition's going?
Well, it's not going particularly well, is it? Listen, it's a great pleasure to follow Chris, and obviously I heard Lindsey's contribution. I just missed Mark, so apologies for that. But obviously, you know, Chris is spot on in respect of the CHIS legislation. It's the reason why we took the decision in Unite to make our opposition to CHIS abundantly clear. We pulled together all of the social justice groups that we deal with, Spy Cops, Orgreaves, Shrewsbury, Blacklisting Support Group, in order to, and the Pat Finucane Foundation, Justice, in order to have meetings with MPs and to talk to the MPs about how dangerous this piece of legislation is. Because while, as Chris correctly says, the Labour movement has traditionally always had campaigns, a call for inquiries in respect of all of the infiltration of our campaign groups. You can put a red line through those calls for inquiries. The idea, Crispin, that you could have an inquiry about what went on in blacklisting whenever you have a piece of legislation that legitimizes blacklisting is for the fairies. It's not going to happen. And it's completely disingenuous for the Labour front bench to talk of the Human Rights Act as policing this bill. The Human Rights Act doesn't create any criminal act whatsoever. And the simple reality of this bill is that the crimes of murder, torture, rape would all be legitimised if in this public interest, a subjective test, not even judicial oversight, and less transparency than the FBI offer to American citizens is absolutely dangerous piece of legislation. And I'm lost as to how anybody in the movement, much less somebody who is a human rights lawyer, doesn't recognise that. So I really, it's vitally important that we as a movement continue to oppose that bill. And we've had meetings. I spoke at a meeting with a number of members of the House of Lords this week to say precisely that. In respect of the contributions that I heard leading up to now, well, obviously you have to judge a person by their actions, not by their words. The decision to suspend Jeremy Corbyn, which we know from public commentary is definitely supported by Keir Starmer. We can all have our own views as to how much further that goes, but Keir's on record as saying he supports it. Should not, in my view, be seen in isolation from the decision to sack Rebecca Long-Bailey. It shouldn't be seen in isolation from Jenny Formby leaving as General Secretary of the Labour Party to be replaced by David Evans, who we now know has taken decisions to try and shut down debate within CLPs. Shouldn't be thought of in isolation from the gerrymandering of the NEC elections, where you have first past the post for the parliamentary party because that suits the right wing, and you have a single transferable vote for the CLPs because their perception is that that also suits the right wing. So you have gerrymandering there, all of these decisions, and then obviously the Chiz bill, which the opposition to that or the abstention to that, I'm not quite sure if you can abstain on an issue such as this. It seems completely contradictory to me that you cannot form an opinion as to whether or not state surveillance is something to oppose or welcome. But anyway, the abstention in that is obviously because people are trying to position the current leadership as patriotic and on the side of security services. And obviously, as we all know, what is really patriotic at a time whenever 50,000 people have died of COVID is to stand on the side of working people. And that's the coalition to build. No Holding Back will be putting out a report tonight, and I would recommend everybody to read that because it says very clearly that if you examine the polling, Labour is not moving up the polls, not with the groups that we need to convince, and it is working class people that we need to convince that we're on the side of, and we're failing to do that. And we need to have ambitious, transformative agendas coming out of the COVID crisis. It is, Crispin, for you to hold a grassroots event tonight, whenever we have reached the shameful number of 50,000 souls who have died as a result of COVID, and it has taken the Labour Party some time to offer an opposition's voice in respect of that. And the reality of COVID, obviously, as we know, it's the most vulnerable, it's the disabled, it's working people who've been exposed to it. And we desperately now need to hear of a transformative agenda for our society that says that the New Deal for workers is a deal that puts our rights first and foremost as we move past COVID. And that's the ambition that we need of Labour. And frankly, if you're going to shut down debate, and if you're not going to listen to the left of the party, you will not come up with a transformative agenda for our society.
All right, well, thank you, Howard. It's good to see you again. I just thought I'd show you what you were talking about. Some of the poll. You had a poll about unity, and I've actually put a poll out to everyone. Was it wrong to suspend Jeremy Corbyn? No other media outlet on the left, including Labour List, I'd like to say, have actually bothered to survey members on this. But 1,400 Labour members replied that 79% said it was wrong. And then on this poll here, should Labour members be able to discuss Jeremy Corbyn's suspension? 82% said yes. So
I'm surprised that there's 13% that think that we don't have the right to freedom of speech. But Crispin, I think the thing to point out to everybody in respect to that polling, and there's elections in May of next year, those are the people that you polled who will be the people who will be asked to knock on doors. It is traditionally the left of this party that put on our rosettes and go and knock on doors and explain what Labour is about and why it can be transformative for working class people. It's not the right wing of our party. You will not see those right wing MPs and their supporters knocking on doors at all hours of the day in order to get support for Labour. It will be us that they will turn to. And if he wants to turn to us, then he better have shown some different decisions by the time he asks us. And that is what he will be judged on, because I imagine that there will obviously, as we know right now, be tens of thousands of people so disheartened who are leaving Labour. I would appeal to them not to. But of those who are staying in Labour, those of us who are staying in order to organise in Labour, there will be thousands of those who are staying who are thinking to themselves, I will stay, but I will not knock on the door for this leadership. And that is what he has to change. Otherwise, he cannot win.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Howard. I'm going to speak to a Labour member in Leicester. Harry, are you there, Harry?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I was just unmuting.
That's right. Now, Harry, are you going to be knocking on doors for Keir Starmer?
Well, it's that. In Leicester West, people who have been active together, have been Zooming with meetings like this, much, much smaller, of course, local people. And we've been saying, what should we do? We're Corbyn supporters. What do we think is going on? How are we going to behave? Well, we ain't leaving. That's for sure. Very, very few people have left our constituency, which is 3 or 4 times larger than it was prior to 2015. Yeah. By the way, we constituency itself spent £2,500 on a van, on a bus during the in 2019, and we did ourselves 5 other constituencies. Didn't see much sign of momentum, by the way, but we went out and we canvassed ourselves. Yeah. What's happening in Leicester West is that very few people have left, but there's hardly any activity, obviously on top of the pandemic. But politically, people are now winning the activity. They voted in the election, and we're waiting to see how things develop. But we have agreed that the worst thing to do would actually be to leave. We're not going to leave the Labour Party. I'm under threat of expulsion myself. And I'm not going to leave until they drag me out of the door. Yeah. As Howard has said, we are the foot soldiers, and Liz Kendall in Leicester West ain't got any anymore. There will be none. She'll have to draft in a few of her own, but I don't think she's going to be able to match the kind of the support that we gave her before. But let me just say something about the United States. Keir Starmer wrote an article this week in The Guardian saying that how pleased he was and praised Biden because we share the same values. He said those are liberty, cooperation, democracy and the rule of law. What democracy in the Labour Party when the General Secretary is acting in the way that he's done? By the way, we'll be having a meeting, an all-members meeting, and we will be discussing a resolution about the report to the Equalities Commission report and Jeremy Corbyn. And we will be telling anyone who tells us we can't speak up to fuck off.
I'm pleased
that is what we will be doing.
Sorry, Harry, I'm sorry, the Zoom just cut out there just while he was swearing, so it's just perfect. I'm going to move on now to, but I think we get where you're coming from. I'm going to move on to Kevin in Dorset. Kevin,
can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Yep.
You can swear if you like. We've got a swearing policy going on here. Are you going to be campaigning for Keir Starmer in a broad coalition?
Definitely not. I think it's interesting the trying to learn what we can from Biden, and I think there is actually precious little. to learn from Biden, a lot to learn from Bernie Sanders, and Bernie saying we've got to keep fighting in and out of the party. And I think that is an important thing. But what I am cheered by Biden is the thing that most cheers me is, as an Irishman, his attention to Ireland. He is going to pressure the Johnson gang and not let them just ruin the Irish peace accord. And Johnson and his English Tory MPs have always neglected Ireland. They're just not interested. Ireland's a problem, and has been England's problem for the 900 years of its colonization. So that is not going to change unless there is big pressure from outside. And I am really hoping that that Biden is going to do that. But so far as Starmer is concerned, well, the further he goes to the right, it reminds me of before the '97 election, when I was a Labour Party member in what was Tessa Jowell's South London constituency. And in the months coming up to that '97 election, I was phoned, at least once a week, asking for financial contribution. Give us £5, give us £10. You know, we really need to win. And I was saying, look, he's going further and further to the right. I'm not at all happy with this. And I was told over the phone by somebody from Labour head office, well, he just has to do that in order to get elected. And don't worry, he'll do all the proper Labour things when he's elected. Well, we saw what happened. He fiddled around with a few things initially, but as nearly always happens with promises of the left, once they get into power, they move to the right. Now, he was right enough at the beginning, and he just moved further and further. I see Starmer going in the same sort of direction. Starmer could win without the left, but only by taking the party so far to the right that all these Tory voters, especially those that went from Labour to Tory last time, will think, oh, well, he's more competent than Johnson. That's, of course, assuming Johnson's still there. A more competent pair of hands for Tories, therefore we'll vote for him. But what will they call themselves? New Labour or whatever they want? Blair hijacked the Labour Party, and Starmer is doing the same. So who knows what's going to happen between now and then? But yes, the other speakers are absolutely right. We've got to keep fighting in and out of the party. There are a number of people who've left already, but they still feel of the left, and they can come back if they feel it is worth worth fighting for, and it's going to have a proper transformative agenda.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I'm going to move on to Chris. Are you there, Chris? Chris.
Yes, I'm here.
Now, can you remind me where you're from again? I should have known. Oh, you've gone muted. Hold on.
Oh, that's it. I'm unmuted. Erith and Thamesmead.
Oh yeah. Okay, Erith and Thamesmead. So are you going to go out campaigning for Keir Starmer?
Well, I think what we've got to do on the left is be selective who we go out for. Where there's good people, we must go out for them. But where all the people are who toe his line, Starmer's line, and right wing, and unprincipled people, ladder climbers, etc., those MPs, we leave them to paddle their own canoes. But I'm so disappointed because when Mr. Corbyn came as Labour leader, I think he gave a lot of people hope. Well, Starmer is hopeless, and I just don't have anything to do with it. I don't want to listen to him. I just know where he's coming from. He seems to me, well, I'm under no illusion that he is the establishment's second line of defence for privatisations and PFI contracts. And I think those elements that their privatisation and PFI, the stench of those remains in our party. They have reduced people's working conditions and standards down to next to nothing, casualisation, and also these same wolves in sheep's clothing that we have in Parliament, some of them, they have allowed this to happen over the years. Because since I've been on this earth, I've seen the efforts of good people in politics to create housing for people, ordinary people, at rates they can afford to put a roof over their head. We must now aim to put roofs over the heads of people from minimum wage upwards, and we must try and get decent permanent work for people, especially in the rail industry, you know, fixing the track and stuff, all these contractors, and likewise in the health service. All these contractors need to go. But I was listening to a shadow minister talking about the track and trace yesterday evening. And although he was saying how it's failed, he didn't have the guts to say it was the private contractors that were failing. And if that same amount of money was given to the National Health and the councils, they would do a much superior job. But we must realise that we do outnumber these wolves in sheep's clothing, quite a number to one. I'd say, think it's about 100 to 1 we outnumber them. And I think if we stand up for what's right and just, then we're going to stop these people walking all over us. And I think us blokes now, we've got to really put ourselves up a couple of notches. We've got to be the new Honorin Bevins and the new Major Clement Attleys. And the ladies, would you not, I think if you could rise up to being the new Florence Nightingales and Elizabeth Fry's, then we are going to have a Labour Party fit for purpose by the next election. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Chris. Now I'm going to move on to Stoke. Mark McDonald, are you there, Mark?
I am here.
Are you the next Nye Bevan?
Oh, goodness me. I don't think anyone could rise to those heights and be anything like as great as he was. I think there is, you know, within our Parliament, when we look at those on the left and we look at, well, who is going to come forward? And I don't think it's going to be a man either. I think there are some great women on the left in Parliament, great young women that are going to be coming up. And those are the people that I can see, people like Nadia coming up and leading our party in the future from the left.
What's your view on Keir Starmer's attempts at creating a coalition that will propel us to power? Do you think it's successful?
The question for this evening's discussion is, does Keir Starmer need the left? And he's plainly made a decision that he doesn't need the left. He's plainly made the decision that he can win a general election without the left. And he doesn't need to focus upon the membership. He needs to focus upon the general public and get their vote, and that's how he's going to win the general election. And everything that he's doing within Parliament is trying not to rock the boat so he can look prime ministerial, look like a national leader and become the next prime minister. That's the tactic that he's got. Now, when it comes to the left, obviously he's making a serious error, because as you rightly say, and Howard and others have rightly said, when it comes to elections, who's going to be knocking those doors? Who's going to be delivering those leaflets? Who's going to be canvassing? And it is mainly the left that go out in the freezing cold and the rain to do this in the evenings. But I do think that we do have a problem on the left, because we are, we are fragmented. We are in separate groups, and I'm CLP secretary. Two things have come that I can tell you about recently. I tried to put a motion down before my CLP in support of Jeremy. That was banned. I sent it to members. Within half an hour, a member had put it up on Twitter complaining. Within an hour, I'd got an email from Region saying I wasn't allowed to do it, and it was taken off the agenda. Secondly, what I think we need to be doing, and what I'm doing as secretary, is getting organised. Is getting organised with our constituency. We've got AGMs coming up across the country, AGMs that we didn't have over the summer. We've got to be organised for those AGMs. We've got to make sure that we have left candidates. We've got to make sure that we take control through our AGMs of the local government committees, the new committee that replaces the local campaign forums. We've got to start selecting left-wing candidates, both for Parliament and for local elections. We've got to start supporting them. And as a group, we've got to start getting organised, because I'm afraid one of the things that is failing us, and as secretary, I'm seeing members leaving, is that we're not working as one, and we've got to start coming together and working as one and getting stronger, because it is only when Keir Starmer realises that he needs us, because right now he believes that he doesn't need us. He's made that decision. It is only when he realises that he does need us that he is going to start thinking about what he is doing as a leader in relation to policies. The bit like Biden did, he needed the left in America. He needed them. He needed Bernie Sanders, which is why he's moved to the left in some of his policies. Unless we get together, unless we become stronger, unless we become organised across the country, unless we show Starmer and that he cannot win without us, then we've lost. Basically, we've got to get organised.
Right, very good point. Yeah, if we look like we're indispensable, then we will be included. So, all right, thank you, Mark. I'm going to move on to Mike in I believe it's North London. Are you there, Mike?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah. What do you think about what you've heard? And are you thinking that Starmer's doing a good job of creating a coalition, or is he not interested in that at all?
I don't think he's doing a very good job of creating a coalition with the left because of the way that Jeremy Corbyn's been treated. But I'm not convinced that he's completely of the right, in the sense that, when Tony Blair ran the party, members didn't matter at all, and all that mattered were the donors. And Tony Blair actually said, after the election in 2019, we have to replace the membership. That's what he said. They don't want this large number of members. It's a headache for them, because we are here and we are pushing for policies which the right wing of the party don't like. Now, I don't know where Starmer quite stands on that. He tilts one way, he tilts the other. If he wants to build a broad coalition, perhaps we should take him at face value. But, we are not just in a broad coalition to be voting fodder and getting people out to vote on election day. One of the reasons why I think the party needs the left is because it's the left that has the popular policies. If you look at the centre and the right over the years, they have triangulated to Tory policies, and that hasn't really pleased anybody. And if you go back to 2015, before Jeremy Corbyn became leader, you actually had the right wing saying, oh, we lost the 2015 election because Labour was too left wing, even though we were wiped out in Scotland because Labour was way too right wing. And of course, in 2015, before Jeremy Corbyn became leader, we were abstaining on benefit cuts. Well, those days are behind us. We put forward popular policies of anti-austerity, get rid of tuition fees, public ownership of utilities and rail. And although there are reasons why we lost the 2019 election, most people don't think it was the policies. Individually, those policies remain popular as they were in 2017. And the interesting thing about this is, although the party is very factionally divided between the left and the right, there's actually more movement around the issue of policy than there is on anything else. And you do sometimes get a bit surprised when you wake up and look at the shadow cabinet deciding to vote permanently against the benefit cap. And just to correct what Lindsey said earlier, it's true that Labour did abstain on the second reading of the Overseas Operations Bill, but they did vote against it at the report stage. So you have to square that a little bit with the narrative that Labour is universally going in a Blairite direction. It's more complicated. And I think there's pressure from the right to shut down the left and shut down the party. But we're not going anywhere. And we're going to continue to push on the policy issues that keep the Labour Party popular. And that's the message I would say to Keir. If you want us to go out and lobby and knock on the doors in the rain and the snow, you're going to have to listen to us when we make policy at party conference.
Well, thank you, Mike. You're always good for very short stuff. Thank you. And Brian.
Take the light from the candle, take the heat from the fire, take the turn from the handle, take the power from the wire. What have you got left? What have you got left? Take the wine from the bottle, take the moon from the night, take the speed from the throttle, take the cause from the fight. What have you got left? Yeah, what have you got left? Take the dance from the dancer, take the eye from the prize, negotiate the easy answer, calculate a compromise. And what have you got left? What have you got left? Take the heart from the body, take the brain from the head, and I can be in your gang, or bang bang I'm dead. Yeah, and what have you got left? What have you got left? What have you got left?
How are you doing, Brian?
I'm doing well. You?
Yeah, good.
Seems to be very good.
What's your view? Do you think Keir Starmer actually wants a coalition involving the left, or do you think he's got other plans?
No, he's definitely got other plans. I mean, I know, I've been talking to some people on the right today, that there is a group together that are working to eliminate what they call Corbynistas from the party. I think Seamus Milne knows quite a lot about it. I haven't spoken to him. I don't know him, but it's happening, and I think it's obviously a dreadful mistake. I mean, the Labour Party has allowed itself on the left to be labelled, I don't know, what happens whenever John McDonald appears? They call him a Marxist, don't they? Well, the right has been captured by Hayek and market forces is a euphemism for the power of money. And that's what happened. I was Labour fundraiser in 95, 96, 95, particularly with John Norton, who was Merlin's husband. And we set up Labour fundraising. And Tony brought in Michael Levy, and I resigned. I went to Michael McDonald, resigned, because if they give you 100,000, they want something. If they give you $1 million, they demand it. And it was high donor fundraising. And it was Tony, exactly what our friend Just Mike said. That Tony wanted to have a kind of a kitchen cabinet, Jonathan Powell, him, and Cameron, and not too many members. Our strategy was get a lot of members, because the internet was coming in, and we could do it. He didn't want it. He wanted to go higher donor fundraising to exercise control. It's a terrible mistake. He became captured by the idea of market forces. Peter Mandelson at a conference knowing my views came. I gave the money to recruit Peter Mandelson a long time ago, and Peter came over and sort of gloated and said, "It's all market forces now, Brian." So we're captured by market forces. Eric Hobsbawm was right. Tony was Thatcher in trousers, and I fear that Keir Starmer might be the same. It's a major failure. Go on.
So you think
What do you say?
that it's sort of he was just making writing an article making a point that wasn't really true about the coalition.
You've got to look at actions, haven't you? I mean, somebody was talking about the spy cops. I mean, that's two things. It's a moral failing to not engage. It's also a tactical failing, because I believe, I'm advised, that we're going to hear a lot about illegitimate children fathered by these cops who went off and left people. Hasn't yet come out, but I'm told by somebody who's close to that it's going to happen. I don't know whether it will, but if it does, salacious always wins, doesn't it? It will hit the front page, and if it's true, it'll look a blooming idiot. So it's all very bad. And I think this business of setting up a group which I know is happening, setting up a group to get rid of the so-called Corbynistas is ridiculous, especially at this time. When, if you read, I tried to help John McDonald during with Prem Seeker, and I was part of that little group, and John McDonald did two things there. First of all, he got a very clever group of people together, working with Rebecca Long Bailey, who was ridiculous to get rid of her, like Annalise Dodds. What he did was he brought academics together, because he wanted to avoid what he called, and he's dead right, corporate capture. The accountants come in and take things over, and the bankers, and it was a big mistake. And he produced the most wonderful set of policies, I believe, including free bull brand. Wouldn't that be wonderful now? And they were trash. The Labour Party has never understood the power of the tabloids. Seriously, never understood the power of the tabloids to undermine Labour policy. And it has a huge impact, because I'm an old hack, I was at Times and Telegraph, and I hate to say it, the Daily Mail when I started. And if the Sun runs something, it gets picked up all over the place. I mean, I was involved in a big British Airways thing years ago, and I investigated Richard Branson. And the editor of the Sun at that stage was a man called David Yellen, and I had lunch with him, and he asked me what was happening, and I told him, and he splashed the Sun on it. Now, I had people I knew who were city editors calling me, who had written about this story a year before, but because it was in the Sun, their editors were saying, give me 500 words, The tabloids set the agenda, and they should be attacked. I mean, the Barclay brothers, look at them, who Telegraph and not tabloids, and the Spectator, Murdoch, and Rothermere. I mean, who's put his big house in his wife's name, claims to be non-dom. We should be attacking them as tax dodgers. We should be undermining the proprietors. We need to tackle the man.
Right.
Not the policy, and Labour really fails to get it. It's fighting within itself at the moment. I quite understand what's happening. That's what all this debate has been about, and it's very, very sad. We should be exposing the policies of Hayek and the way in which why do big companies support the Conservatives? Because it's the power of money. They know that market forces mean less regulation. That means more exploitation. And it's as simple as that. The average FTSE executive is earning 5 million a year, and people on 0 hours contracts.
Your Zoom is very jumpy. I just thought I'd let you know. And I'm getting a bit dizzy watching you. I've heard all you've said, and it's very interesting and rather depressing as well. But thank you for coming on. I'm going to speak now to our. Finally, I'm going to bring on John Dunn, who is in. He's in Brighouse. Is that right, John?
I am, unfortunately, yes.
So, John, did you just hear what Brian said? He doesn't think that Keir Starmer's serious about wanting to build a coalition with the left, and that he's perhaps more interested in the corporate lobbyist world.
I think
Does
that's
that
obvious.
surprise you?
Yeah, it's obvious. Keir Starmer came from nowhere. He's only been an MP 5 years. He was gifted a seat by his mate Ed Miliband. He's had no experience, and he needs us like he needs another hole in his arse, I think. All we are foot soldiers with gluttons for punishment. We go out and knock on doors in all sorts of weather for all sorts of shit, hoping that somehow they're going to make a bit of a difference. And I think we've got to say enough's enough. If he's going to treat us like this, then we have to respond accordingly. You wouldn't take it from a manager at work. We've got to go on strike. Don't knock. I'm not knocking on any more doors. I knocked on 4 constituencies in the last general election campaign. I spent most of the election day in the pouring rain in what was my former constituency, North East Derbyshire, knocking for Crispin, an excellent candidate. And what do we get from Starmer? We deserve to lose that election. Of course we deserve to lose it, because he'd got his 5th column inside headquarters making sure that we did. So all we are to them is slaves. Go out and knock. You never see these people on the stump. Go out and knock, get all sorts of imbeciles elected, and then go away and we'll call on you when we need you. And I'll be honest, you know, you have to pass your time during all this COVID stuff. So I actually sat down and roughly worked out what I'd spent in giving money to the Labour Party, what I'd spent in time off working unpaid for the Labour Party. And I'll tell you something, I'd have a bleeding new car now and all that. These people make no sacrifices. It's us that do it. And we've got a history of betrayal going back 50 years, the sort of areas that I come from. This is nothing new. And I think what you might find in the next general election, we can't wait 4 years for some shining knight to come and save us. What you'll find, I think, Labour's already toxic, partly because of Brexit, but partly because of all the betrayals through from Harold Wilson, especially under Blair. And you're already seeing in some coalfield areas community groups getting organised, stealing council seats off a Labour councillors who've done nothing for years other than walk around with a blue folder looking important and cashing in their expenses each month when they get them. You'll find that Labour is slowly being exterminated in these constituencies. The general election result were only the start of it. So we have to work, I think, outside the party as much as keeping a presence inside it. You know, Chris Peace makes the point that Labour Party policy has more often than not been changed from outside than inside, from pressure groups like our Orgreave campaign. We were going for years before the Labour Party even noticed us. In fact, at one time, we were an embarrassment to them. So no, to sum up, they don't need us. They don't want us. Only once in a blue moon, go out and knock some doors, deliver these shitty leaflets with glossy pictures of Keir Starmer on, and then go back in your boxes and go to sleep till we want you again. So I think we've got to treat them with the same sort of contempt they treat us.
Oh, well, thank you, John. I didn't think you'd mince your words on that. No, we've come to... I've had to mute you now. Rob Johnson's here. Now, you've written a song for us again, a new song?
It is a new song, yes.
A new song again, right. What Have You Got Left?
Yes.
It's cool. Now, is this to do with Keir Starmer?
Yes, it is. It's to do with, if you take basically, isn't it surely true that if you take the left out of the Labour Party, what's left?
Yeah.
There's nothing, is there? It's like a shell. A living, breathing automaton, like Tony Blair's smile, the Cheshire Cat grin. It's nothing.
Yeah.